So I had an audition at the University of North Texas last weekend, which went really well. But something happened that sort of made me really, really irritated for like 10th time now, and I just want to talk about that. When I went down there, I told them that was interested in double majoring in music theory and jazz guitar. I'm currently only a jazz guitar major, so they don't offer a theory major here. But I was told by the rather strict woman there that I could not because I was not a classical guitar major. And this is something that really grinds my gears, that why can't a jazz guitarist, someone who almost all jazz guitarists I know have a much more knowledge about music theory than any of the classical guitar, well, except for like my professors, but most of the classical guitarists I know. I just get really mad when things don't make sense like that, because and I asked a bunch of people, I've asked this almost every time I've been told this, why I couldn't major in music theory and be a jazz musician, and the only somewhat reasonable answer anyone has ever managed to give me is, well, the repertoire is mostly classical, so you have to be experienced in classical guitar to play it. First of all, there isn't really much classical guitar repertoire that's really, theoretically out there. I mean, there's some jazz guitar repertoire that's very out there. Fred Hamilton in particular has some pretty interesting stuff, but I'm perfectly familiar with classical repertoire. I'm look through classical music a lot. I love working with classical music and interpreting it in jazz and using it in my jazz playing, and it's sort of insulting to me in a way that people would just assume that because I'm a jazz musician I don't know classical music and I can't play classical music and I can't understand classical music. And some amazing ideas have come from jazz music, like free expression with stuff like Ornette Coleman's music and John Coltrane's music, and things like the Lydian chromatic concept, which George Russell came up with for Miles Davis. And there's a lot of really fascinating stuff in music that came out of jazz that just, I don't understand how you can say that someone in jazz can't be a music theory major because they don't know a repertoire that's appropriate. There's so much appropriate jazz music, as much as there is appropriate classical music, in my opinion, that serves to explain some really interesting concepts in music theory. Things like secondary dominance and things like tritone substitution and augmented sixth chord motion, which is pretty much the same as like a series of tritone subs, which we'll talk about later in another chord function video. But it's just, how can you say that we can't study music theory if really what we do a lot is study music theory and study how notes fit over chords and what you can do to expand chords and make them and expand passages and mold them around your idea of what you're expressing. And it's really, really irritating. That's just what I've been irritated about, so I needed to say something like that. Alright? Bye.